Future. This is not the kind of capitalism that we were taught in textbooks. This is probably the worst hybrid.
What's your reaction to President Obama's $500,000 cap on senior executive salaries today in companies that have to be bailed out by the government?
That's certainly a step in the right direction. After all, taxpayers are paying a very, very large amount here. Already $350 billion. It looks like the administration will ask for at least $350 billion more for the banks, probably $800 billion more. Whatever it is, there is no excuse for these bank executives taking home more than the President of the United States earns. Well, $500,000 is more than the President earns. The President earns $400,000. $500,000 will not put these bank executives in the poorhouse. It still places them in the top 2% of income earners in the United States, but it is a fair sacrifice at a time when most of the rest of America is in very, very hard shape.
So how far-reaching will President Obama's re-regulation of the US financial system be?
Well, I can tell you what I think should be done. Banks, for example, must have sufficient capital requirements and have to have limits on the amount of borrowing they do on the basis of those capital requirements. They can't go off balance sheets and do the kind of wild, derivative, speculative borrowing that they did before. That must be outlawed. That must be prohibited. Number two, there've got to be restrictions and eliminations of conflicts of interest on Wall Street. For example, the credit rating agencies that have been rating the issues of companies that pay the credit rating agencies cannot any longer have that a form of payment. That is inherently a conflict of interest. Number three, the compensation systems of Wall Street have to be reformed, and I'm not talking about simply placing a limit of $500,000 on executives. I mean that the compensation systems, as they have been for the last 10 years or so, place a great premium on short-term winning in a kind of gambling situation in which those executives and traders don't have to bear the responsibility for long-term losses. So there should be some sort of a regulation requiring that Wall Street traders and executives have to get no more than perhaps a moving average of 5-year profits or 5-year returns rather than these kind of short-term shenanigans they've been engaged in.
You've observed that America's huge debt bubble has masked a deeper problem for the economy, that American workers and families no longer have the basic income levels and purchasing power to maintain the economy as they did in earlier decades. What's the significance of that for the long haul?
Yes, as recently as 1980, for example, the top 1%, the richest 1% of Americans, took home each year just about 8 or 9% of total income in the United States. Well, that slice of the income pie has been growing since then quite dramatically. 2 years ago, the last time we have good measurements of this, the top 1% took home over 22% of total income. Now, what does that mean? It means that people in the middle and toward the bottom of the middle and even above the middle, but anybody around the middle doesn't have nearly enough income to keep the economy going in terms of purchasing all the goods and services that are being created in this economy. The people at the very top, well, they don't purchase very much in proportion to their income. Being rich, after all, means that you already have most of what you already need. You're not going to spend all of that much. So quite apart from issues of social equity, which I don't want to skim over, those are very, very important, obviously, but quite apart from them, there is this issue of simply keeping the economy going. The last time that the top 1% held over 20% of all of national income in a given year was the year 1928. And we know what happened in 1929.
So how long do you think it's going to be before the American economy returns to positive growth? Are we talking at least another year? Are we talking anything up to 2 or 3 years?
If you're talking about simply getting the business cycle back on track, we're probably talking about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years. If you're talking about a sustainable growth path, and I'm talking, when I say sustainable, I mean a growth that is not subject periodically to deep and perilous declines, and then even in growth periods, rather anemic growth, I think we're talking about maybe 10 or 12 or 15 years in which the government has got to reorganize the economy quite substantially.
Robert Reich, thanks very much for talking with us.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.